We have been told since childhood that hard work is the key to success. That if you simply put in more hours, grind harder, and hustle longer, you will eventually get ahead. But what if that story is a lie? What if working harder is not making you richer, but poorer, not only in money, but in time, energy, and the very things that give life meaning? The modern productivity culture has sold us a vision of life where every moment is optimized for output, where sleep is seen as a luxury, where rest is guilty, and where every hobby or relationship is secretly evaluated for its potential return on investment. We track our steps, our focus hours, our deep work blocks, our calorie intake, and our screen time, not because these numbers tell us how happy we are, but because they tell us how much more we can squeeze out of ourselves. Productivity has become the religion of the modern economy, and we are its most devoted worshippers. Yet the strange irony is that despite all the tools, apps, and hacks designed to make us more efficient, most people feel more exhausted than ever. We are producing more, but feeling less in control. The trap is not just that we work harder, it's that we believe working harder will eventually set us free, when in reality, it deepens our chains. The root of this problem lies in a misunderstanding of what productivity actually is. The original concept meant producing more with the same amount of effort, finding smarter ways to do things, not simply doing more of them. But somewhere along the way, the meaning shifted. Now, productivity is measured in raw hours, in endless tasks completed, and in how busy you look, rather than the real value you create. We have fallen into a cultural trap where effort is mistaken for worth and busyness for progress. Think about the way companies reward employees. Bonuses go to those who stay late, not necessarily those who solve problems efficiently. The person who sends emails at midnight is seen as more committed than the one who finished their work by 3 p.m. and went home. This creates an environment where overwork is celebrated and where people learn to stretch tasks into marathons just to signal dedication. But here's the twist: the harder you work in such a system, the more you trap yourself. Because the more you give, the more is expected. The reward for being able to handle more work is often just more work. It's like running on a treadmill where the speed keeps increasing, but you never get off. The logic of productivity culture is the logic of an endless race where the finish line keeps moving forward. Imagine a medieval farmer told that if he plants twice as many crops, he will earn twice as much. But then the landlord raises his rent and the price of grain drops, so he must plant even more next season to keep up. Eventually, he is producing far more than before, but keeping less of the surplus for himself. That's the modern knowledge worker grinding harder, thinking they are moving up, while the system quietly takes back most of the gains. The technology that promised to free us from drudgery has instead made us available 24/7. The smartphone means you are never truly off work. You carry your office in your pocket, and your boss can reach you at any hour. This is not liberation. It is colonization of your attention and time. Even the so-called freedom of freelancing often means turning yourself into a brand, constantly marketing, hustling, networking, and saying yes to every gig out of fear that saying no will mean losing momentum. But the trap is not just economic, it is also psychological. When you define your worth by how much you do, you become unable to rest without guilt. A free afternoon feels like wasted potential. You start to measure friendships in terms of whether they are productive networking opportunities, or hobbies in terms of whether they can be monetized. The joy of simply existing gets replaced by the anxiety of not doing enough. We have inherited a work ethic from the Industrial Revolution designed for factories and applied it to knowledge work and creative work. We treat humans as machines, expecting that with the right fuel and maintenance, they can run at maximum capacity indefinitely. But humans are not machines, they are ecosystems. They require periods of dormancy, recovery, and play. Without these, the mind and body begin to break down. Burnout is not a sign of weakness, it is the body's final protest against a system that demands infinite growth from finite beings. History shows that cultures which overemphasize productivity eventually collapse under the weight of their own demands. Ancient Rome stretched its legions and resources too far, chasing constant expansion. Medieval Europe's peasants rebelled when feudal lords extracted ever-increasing labor. And in our time, the quiet quitting movement and mass resignations signal that people are reaching their limits. Yet instead of rethinking the system, we invent new hacks, new routines, new ways to squeeze the lemon harder, ignoring that the lemon itself is drying out. What makes this trap so insidious is that it feels virtuous. Working hard is socially rewarded. Laziness is condemned. So even when overwork is killing us, we can feel morally superior for enduring it. The suffering itself becomes proof of our worth, a badge of honor. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The economy does not love you back. It will take whatever you give and then ask for more. Your employer's goal is not your freedom, it's your output. And as long as you measure your life by that metric, you will never win. The philosopher Byung-Chul Han describes our era as the burnout society, where we have shifted from being oppressed by others to oppressing ourselves. We have internalized the boss, now the whip comes from inside our own minds. We tell ourselves we should be doing more, even when no one is watching. Productivity culture has made us both the master and the slave, and this self-exploitation is harder to escape because it feels like freedom. You are not being forced to work, you are choosing to work. But the choice is shaped by fear, insecurity, and the constant comparison to others who seem to be doing more than you. We scroll through social media, seeing people who work harder, travel more, achieve more, and we feel behind even if they are just as trapped as we are. The trap is also generational. Older generations were told that hard work would pay off with a house, a pension, and a stable life. But younger generations see that no matter how hard they work, the price of living keeps rising faster than their wages. So they compensate by working even harder, hoping to outpace the treadmill. Yet the faster they run, the more exhausted they become. This creates a collective illusion where everyone is sprinting, yet no one is truly moving forward. What's more, the obsession with productivity eats away at the very things that make life rich: relationships, art, leisure, contemplation. These are not productive in the narrow economic sense, so they get pushed aside for what seems urgent: emails, meetings, deadlines, metrics. And so the years slip away in a blur of doing without being, without noticing that the things we sacrificed for success were the things that made success worth having. And so the question becomes, what is the cost of building your life on borrowed meaning? For a while, it feels like enough, like an actor living inside a role. You speak the lines, wear the costumes, even convince yourself that this is who you are. But there is a quiet moment, usually in the dark hours of the night, when the applause fades and the makeup comes off, when you are left with the hollow echo of your own thoughts, and you realize the stage was never yours. You were performing for an audience that wasn't even watching, chasing approval from people who are too busy performing for someone else. This is the cycle of inherited meaning, a chain of people acting out scripts written by no one in particular, a lineage of borrowed lives. To break it, you have to do something uncomfortable, maybe even dangerous. You have to stop performing. Imagine the terror of that standing still when the whole crowd is marching, saying no when the expected answer is yes, questioning a story that everyone else swears is true. You will lose people this way. You will lose parts of yourself that you thought were permanent, but were only costumes you had outgrown. And yet, there is freedom in this stripping away. It's like standing barefoot on the earth after years of walking on concrete. You feel the ground again, raw and uneven, alive. At first, you might not even know what your real voice sounds like. Without the borrowed lines, the silence is deafening. But that silence is fertile. It's where your own words will grow. And in that moment, you discover that meaning is not something you find out there waiting to be bestowed by a title or a role. Meaning is something you build from the inside out, like a fire you feed with your own breath. The danger, of course, is that the world doesn't reward this kind of self-authored life immediately. There's no instant applause for walking away from the script. In fact, there's often punishment. You'll be misunderstood, maybe even ridiculed. People will project their own fears onto you, call you reckless, ungrateful, arrogant, because your freedom threatens their certainty. But if you endure the discomfort, if you can sit in that liminal space between the old story and the one you are writing, something shifts. You start to see the invisible architecture of the world. How much of it is just consensus reality, fragile agreements that only hold because no one questions them. You realize you don't have to wait for permission to step outside those agreements. You don't have to live as though the rules are absolute. And once you've tasted that, it's hard to go back. The old game loses its grip on you. You can still play it if you choose, but now it's play, not obedience. And that choice changes everything. This is not to say that life becomes easy. If anything, it becomes more demanding. A self-authored life requires more attention, more responsibility. You can't hide behind "that's just how things are" anymore. You have to decide how things are for you. And sometimes you will get it wrong. You will chase something that turns out to be hollow, or burn yourself out pursuing a dream that doesn't fit. But even those mistakes are yours, and there is dignity in owning them. They become part of the living story you are writing, a story with detours and dead ends, but also with moments of raw beauty that you could never have scripted from the safety of someone else's plan. The irony is that the more you build a life around your own meaning, the less you need to obsess about whether it's enough. Enough for whom? Enough compared to what? The comparison game dissolves when you're no longer competing for a place on someone else's scoreboard. You start to measure your days by different metrics. How present you felt, how deeply you connected, how much you grew into yourself. And those metrics are infinite. There's no finish line. It becomes less about arriving somewhere and more about inhabiting the journey fully. But here's the twist. When you stop living for borrowed meaning, you also stop hoarding it. You stop trying to defend your life choices like fragile possessions. Instead, you share your story openly, not as a prescription, but as an invitation. You realize that meaning expands when it's given away, that by living authentically, you create a ripple that gives others permission to do the same. And this might be the quiet revolution the world needs most, not grand manifestos or perfect blueprints, but people willing to stand in the open with their unvarnished selves, to say, "This is who I am," even if it doesn't fit the mold. Because the truth is, we're all improvising. The scripts were always incomplete. The people we admire most are usually the ones who had the courage to admit that, and then to keep moving forward anyway, making it up as they went along. They trusted that the act of living fully, vulnerably, was enough to generate meaning in real time. And maybe that's the final revelation. Meaning is not a static thing you achieve once and for all. It's a living, breathing presence that grows and shifts as you do. To chase it as if it were a fixed destination is to miss the point. It's not about reaching the mountaintop. It's about feeling the wind in your face as you climb. It's about looking around mid-journey and realizing that the view is already extraordinary. And yes, there will be days when the climb feels endless, when the sky is heavy and the path disappears into fog. On those days, you might feel the pull of the old script, the temptation to slip back into borrowed meaning because it's easier, because at least it's familiar. But if you've come this far, you know too much to go back. You've felt the ground under your bare feet. You've heard the sound of your own voice in the silence. You've glimpsed the kind of freedom that doesn't come from breaking all the rules, but from seeing that most of them were imaginary to begin with. And in that seeing, you are no longer an actor in someone else's play. You are the playwright. You are the stage. You are the story. And the story is still unfolding in ways no one, not even you, can fully predict. That is its beauty. That is its meaning. And that, in the end, is enough.